Revenge of the Bully by Scott Starkey. Chapter 7, My First Big Game. My dad was right about the whole town coming out. The stands were packed. Half the crowd wore black for Garrettsville, the other half blue for Streetsboro. Black and blue, not a promising sign. My stomach tightened and I glanced back at the 4 porta potties behind the end zone. Hopefully I wouldn't have to make any sudden visits. I decided to turn my mind to more pleasant thoughts and tried to pick out a familiar face or two in the stands. The first one I spotted was the boss. Not so pleasant. He was flanked by Cheese and Willie. All 3 wore dark sunglasses and mean expressions. The seats around them were empty, except for one kid. I watched Rishi walk up to the 3 toughest kids in the bleachers with a big smile on his face. He blabbed to the boss for a couple of minutes, showed him something on his iPad. The boss removed his sunglasses, stared at what Rishi was showing him, and eventually nodded approval. Rishi immediately took out his phone and was about to sit down when Willie gestured for him to beat it. I figured I had another minute before the game started, so I scanned the crowd one last time. I spotted my parents and Penny. My mom waved. My dad looked proud, and Penny stuck out her tongue. To their left, I noticed Kayla and Jessica. Kayla saw me and also stuck out her tongue. This is ridiculous. At least Jessica made a little smile before flipping her blonde hair and staring off. 2 rows in back of them sat my former principal, Mr. Feebletop. He wore a New York Mets hat and gave me a big thumbs up. I also noticed that Wendy Wisowitz had come out to support Josh, which was nice except her head was buried in a book. Dave, Slim, and Greg sat nearby. Below all of them, under the bleachers, where no one could spot him, sat Pablo. I gave him a little wave and was happy to see a hand pop out of his gray sweatshirt and wave back. In fact, seeing him and my other friends and my family gave me a feeling of relief. Until Coach Lombardi approached from the sideline, and I remembered I was about to play my first big game in front of everyone I knew. "Good to see you boys so excited," he said. He was either joking or blind, because the team was staring at the ground in silence. He continued, "I've been waiting for a day like this for several years. Who else is ready to go win a football game?" Hector coughed, AJ whimpered, and Joe dejectedly kicked his cleat, trying to dislodge some caked mud. "That's the spirit," Lombardi continued. I began to realize he was serious. He took a step closer to us and stared into our eyes. "You know our game plan, right? The one that almost guarantees victory?" "A no-lose game plan? That sounds promising. Just hand the ball to Rathbone and get out of his way." "Just hand the ball to What?" "Go get him, Rodney!" Coach Lombardi shouted. "Hands in! G-men on 3. 1, 2, 3!" I caught myself glancing back at the porta potties as a barely audible "G-men" wafted into the fall Ohio air. There's nothing like starting a game with an exciting, memorable play. Ours saw Hector toss the football back to me as we had planned. It floated in the air for just a second, but to me it seemed to hover for ages. I'd heard that the game slows down for great athletes, and they have time to do extraordinary things, while the average player sees the game quickly and barely has time to react. And here it was, slowing down for me. But instead of calculating more brilliant plays, all I could think about was everyone was watching me. The thought sent a nervous shudder through my body and my fingertips, just as the football arrived. Still in slow motion, I watched it slip from my hands. "Fumble!" I heard a defender scream. I gasped and tried to dive after it, but my knees turned to jello and fell to the grass. The only other person nearby was Josh. "Get the ball!" I hollered. Amazingly, he reacted quickly and picked it up. "Run!" I yelled. He took a couple of steps, but the Streetsboro defenders had broken through the line. The first tackler ran full speed into him. It was a jarring blow. I watched the Streetsboro kid go flying backward and land hard on the packed dirt. Josh, on the other hand, had barely moved. Unfortunately for Streetsboro, the hit had clearly left him angry. "Run!" I yelled again, only this time it was a warning for the other team. Ignoring me, the next tackler, a big, tough-looking linebacker, dove at the enraged grizzly bear in the midst. Josh caught him midair and body-slammed him to the ground. Seeing this, the rest of the Streetsboro team stopped dead in their tracks. Their coach screamed them on, but Josh looked so ferocious they refused to go near him. At this point, Josh could have walked the length of the field and strolled into the end zone for a touchdown. Instead, his crazy temper made him hurl the ball at the closest Streetsboro player. It bounced off the kid's backside and rolled toward me. I gulped. A chance to redeem myself. I picked it up and darted forward, managing to cross the line of scrimmage before the defense attacked and tripped me up. I'd gained about 5 yards. Some people in the stands cheered, but most just looked confused. The Streetsboro coach hollered at the refs and called timeout. We shuffled over toward our sideline. Josh was still breathing hard, but starting to calm down. I was unsure of what to expect from Coach Lambardi. Yeah, I had gained a couple of yards, but I had also fumbled. I needn't have worried. Now that's how you play football, Lambardi said, grinning. I like the way you two think. Being unpredictable is a gift. Look how rattled you got Coach Laundrie and his players. Keep it up. He called over to Trevor. I hope you're taking notes. I thought I saw a puff of steam shoot out from the ear holes of Trevor's helmet. Did I get a home run? Josh asked. Ha ha, good one, Coach answered. You two crack me up. What a duo. As he walked away, I heard him say something about Mac and Viner. I was surprised how quickly halftime rolled around. Streetsboro had scored a second quarter field goal, and the score was 3-0. Before heading to the locker room for the break, I was joined by a couple of my friends on the field. Rishi seemed oddly nervous. You're holding back, right? He said. Saving everything for the second half, right? I get it. I was about to ask why he cared so much when my parents and Penny came up to us. Rishi? My mom asked. Who are those 3 men you were talking to in the stands? What men? He lied. Those men, my mom answered, pointing right at the boss. And why are they wearing pinstripe suits at a football game? Before he could answer, the marching band started heading our way. I've got to go join the team, I said. Enjoy the game. See you later. As it turned out, however, there wasn't much to enjoy. The second half dragged and dragged. Late into the fourth quarter, we still trailed by 3. With every passing second, I felt more desperate to win. I felt full of energy. I stayed right behind Josh for most of the game and avoided getting smashed to pieces, except for one hard hit that left my ears ringing. But now wasn't the time to worry about injuries. Now was the time for a hero. For the first time, I knew I could do it. We had the ball, and were down to our final play. We lined up. This was it. My nerves were on overload. Hector snapped and flipped the ball to me. Luckily, the defense seemed unusually slow to react, and I bolted through the line without being touched. I couldn't believe I was in the open field. Seeing the end zone ahead, I ratcheted up the speed. Only the Streetsboro safety could stop me now. But instead of running me down, he just watched me run by. Evidently, he and the whole team were in awe of my blazing speed. I was going in for the touchdown. I really was hero material. Why had I ever doubted myself? As I crossed into the gold-painted end zone, I knew that Jessica was somewhere in the stands watching me save the game for Garrettsville. Just like all my favorite players, I spiked the ball and turned, ready to soak in the cheers of the adoring crowd. I was met by silence. It was oddly terrifying. My first thought was that I was in some bizarre dream. Finally, the crowd erupted into screeching laughter. All I saw were fingers pointing at me. I quickly checked to see if my pants were still on. The line judge walked over and picked up the ball I had spiked. That was some run, son, he said. Too bad the other team called timeout just before the play got off. I hadn't heard the call because of the dumb ringing in my ears. Feeling like a fool, I walked back to the huddle through the howling Streetsboro defense. Classic Rathbone, Trevor called from the side. The game ended a few minutes later. Streetsboro held on for the 3-0 win. I avoided looking into the crowd. I didn't want to see any more smiling, laughing faces. At least I'd given them something to enjoy. Trailing Coach Lambardi, we shuffled back to the locker room. Losing the game was bad enough, but playing the role of town bonehead, well, I felt pretty low. The rest of the team and I sat down on the wooden benches with our helmets resting by our feet. I wasn't looking forward to the speech I knew was coming. Was he going to yell at us? At me? I kept my eyes fixed on a pattern in the blue linoleum tile floor. Coach Lambardi walked into the middle of the locker room. Boys, that was spectacular, he cheered. Huh? Coach Manuel, when was the last time we lost by only 3? 5 years ago. Coach Lambardi blotted his eyes. You boys have made me very happy today. Well done. A 3-point loss. I think I'll be heading out with Mrs. Lombardi and treating myself to surf and turf tonight. I'll see you Monday. Game ball goes to Rathbone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We changed back into our street clothes. Coach's speech had an uplifting effect, and while I had to deal with the typical "nice run, Rodney" comments, I recognized it was okay to laugh at myself. In the end, the whole team was cracking up about the famous timeout touchdown. I joked around with everyone as they filed out of the locker room and was actually starting to feel pretty good when one word sent a shiver down my spine. Scram! It was the unmistakable voice of Cheese, and it was directed to the few kids still left talking to me. I turned around to face him. Cheese was well over 6 feet tall and looked about as wide as the entire offensive line. The remaining teammates took one look at the oversized visitor and bolted. Cheese called out, "The coast is clear." The boss and Willie walked in, followed by Rishi. Satisfied that no one else was in the locker room, the boss stared down at me and shook his head. Something told me the words "better luck next time" weren't about to spring from his lips. He got right to the point. "Your friend here," he motioned at Rishi, "ain't doing you no favors." Rishi spoke up excitedly. "I still say it will put you on the map. It'll put me in the poorhouse," the boss shouted. "I'll go broke." I was completely confused. "Can somebody please tell me what's going on?" "Sure," the boss growled. "I'll tell you. This little joker is about to cost me a boatload of money. He talked me into the dumbest thing I ever did. He said I should run a full-page ad for Mama's in tomorrow's daily paper. We sent it out right before the game." "What's so dumb about that?" I asked. He was ready to explode. "What's so dumb? The ad promises that once we open, Mama's got to give away a whole day of free food for each G-Men lost between tomorrow and the grand opening. That's still weeks away. I'll go out of business before we even get going." "Why did you agree to that?" I shouted, suddenly realizing that Rishi had just upped the pressure in my life by 1,000,000%. The boss looked just as panicked. "I agreed to this cockamamie plan." "Cockamamie?" Cheese interrupted. "That's a funny word." The boss snapped his finger. Willie ran over and smacked Cheese on the head. "Ow!" The boss continued. "I agreed to this crazy plan because your dopey friend told me it was a lock. He said use the best football player in America or something." The two of us turned and faced Rishi. My friend was pacing in the corner of the locker room talking on his phone. After a minute, he hung up and walked over to us. "I've got good news and bad news." "What's the bad news?" I asked, wondering whether I'd ever see my family again. "The paper's already gone to press for tomorrow. The ad is running. There's nothing we can do to stop it." We all looked at each other. "Yeah?" the boss finally asked. "So what's the good news?" Rishi smiled proudly. "I was able to get us great placement. We're on the back cover. Everyone from here to Cleveland will see it tomorrow, Mr. Boss." Without warning, the boss kicked the lockers so hard that Cheese and Willie jumped as high as Rishi and me. "Don't call me Mr. Boss," he yelled at Rishi. Then he glared in my direction. "You better make sure that team of yours don't lose no more games." "But the G-Men haven't won in like 100 years, I tried to explain. "Then go out and hire 100 coaches. I don't care if you gotta drop out of school to train the team round the clock. No more losses. You got it? And you," he shouted, returning his anger to Rishi, "you'd better make me lots of money with all your marketing stuff." "Don't worry, Mr. Boss." Willie and Cheese cringed. I wanted to jump in a locker and hide. The boss just stared down at Rishi and took a deep breath. Finally, he just shook his head. "Let's go, boys." The three of them left. Rishi stood smiling at me. "Wow. Wow!" I fought off an urge to strangle him. "What were you thinking with that ad?" Still smiling, he put his hands up. "Rodney, relax. You're talking to Rishi, remember? Have I ever put you in a bad spot?" My face felt funny, and I wondered if I was developing a twitch, like my old teacher, Mrs. Lutzkraut. Rishi continued, "Don't let the boss's temper get you worked up. We're right where we want to be. I want to be home, safe, sound, and watching TV. Come on, I know you're enjoying this as much as I am. Besides, you'll be famous after tomorrow." "Listen, Rishi, Suddenly, my face definitely began to twitch. Famous? Rishi, what did you do? Well, the ad needed a picture to go along with a part of the G-Men, so I kind of used a photo of you. My heart stopped. Not the one from camp of me in a dress. Rishi laughed. No, a good one I took of you at practice. Boy, Rodney, you have to learn to trust me. Trust Rishi? I couldn't think of anything scarier if I tried. Chapter 8, Garrettsville Idol. Rodney, get up! My dad yelled, pushing open my door. It's a wonderful morning! Huh? I yawned. Hurry! Get dressed and come down to breakfast! I hadn't seen him this excited since he found out Garrettsville had a Dairy Queen. What's the rush? I asked. Rush! He echoed back. I've been waiting all morning for you to get up. I was about to ask why, but he was gone in a flash. I pulled on my jeans and a t-shirt and shuffled down the stairs. Penny pushed her way past me going up the stairs. She looked glum. Rodney, Rodney, Rodney. It's all I hear. She turned at the top of the stairs. We both know this popularity stuff isn't going to last. She seemed more annoyed at me than usual. What had set her off? I rounded into the kitchen and found the answer. My mom and dad were staring at a newspaper on the kitchen table. Isn't this exciting? My mom gushed without taking her eyes from the paper. Isn't what exciting? I started to ask, but my dad interrupted me. Put on some shoes. We've got to head down to the newsstand before they're all gone. Before what's gone? This! He held up the back page of the newspaper. A familiar-looking kid in a black and gold uniform stared back at me. I took a step closer and saw the reason the kid's face looked familiar. It was me, taking up almost the whole page. In the picture, I held my helmet in the crook of my arm. Several of my teammates were small and out of focus in the background, but I was as large and sharp as could be. My hair was wet with sweat, and I was staring off, looking serious and confident. Storm clouds hung dramatically low over the horizon. I definitely looked the part of football hero. I'd give Rishi that. My mom was smiling proudly. You look so handsome and grown up. And look, the caption says Rodney Rathbone, G-Men football star. I want to mail a copy to Aunt Evelyn. Go with your dad and get some more Harry. Sunday mornings were usually a quiet time in my house, but today everyone was telling me to hurry. I ran down the driveway after my father. He was almost pulling it away as I jumped in. Be sure to get plenty of copies, my mom called after us. As my dad and I drove downtown, I kept thinking about the full-page ad in my hands. What would this mean for me? Yes, it was pretty cool to see myself occupying the back page of the newspaper, but what would happen in school? What would the rest of the team think about me being singled out? I knew that Trevor wouldn't appreciate it. Just last night I had come to the conclusion that I needed Trevor more than ever if we were going to win the next few games. Win the next few games. I was so caught up in the picture of me I had forgotten about the boss. My stomach tightened into a knot. For the first time, I let my eyes drift down to the writing below the photo. We guarantee that G-Men football wins every game between now and the grand opening, or dinner's on us. It was signed, The Gang at Mama's Restaurant. I gulped as my dad pulled into a spot. He was in a rush to get out of the car, but I lingered, thinking that my sister had been right earlier. Thanks to Rishi's dumb ad, everything would be coming to an end real soon for me. Unless, of course, no one paid attention to it. A wave of relief suddenly washed over me. How silly I'd been. The rest of Garrettsville probably wouldn't even notice the ad. There he is! Someone screamed. It's Rodney Rathbone! I saw him first, another voice chimed in. They were all holding newspapers. My dad stood outside the car and held up his hands to the gathering crowd. People, calm down. There's plenty of Rodney for everyone. What? As I slid down in the seat, I heard him continue. I just spoke to Rodney's agent this morning, and there will be a formal autograph session this afternoon. In the meantime, the father of the football star would be very happy to sign your newspapers. His smile stretched from ear to ear. At least one Rathbone was enjoying himself. Any hopes that the advertisement would go unnoticed in school the next day was dashed, before I even had a chance to walk through the front doors. Standing on the steps, quite near where my horrible hated football career had begun, I was met by Rishi handing out newspapers to a throng of students. I was about to yell at him when my worries were replaced by an unexpectedly pleasant surprise. 15 or so girls stood clearly waiting for me. I like your picture, Rodney, said one girl I didn't even know. I think she was blushing. My pulse quickened. My mom said I looked handsome, but moms always say that. Thanks, I replied. Can you sign mine? Asked another girl. I liked the attention, but then I saw Jessica among the group, and my knees buckled. A number of hands helped prop me up. I regained my composure as our eyes met. My face got hot, and I smiled at her. Kayla stepped between us. My smile sagged. Don't think some fancy camera work and media attention is going to get you anywhere, she scolded. We know what you're all about, don't we, Jessica? Jessica? Jessica stepped around her and returned my smile. I don't want to be late for class. We'll be at your game, Rodney. What? Really? Wow, I love football. I felt dizzy. The day was actually turning out really good for some of us. Kayla, on the other hand, stamped her foot, and I noticed her face redden. She turned to follow Jessica, but Rishi sprang up in her way. So, you think my camera work is fancy? Ah! She roughly pushed past him. Yep, she likes me, he said to me. Maybe I'll ask her out to Mama's. With all the great PR work I've done for him, I bet the boss would let us eat for free. For free? I shouted. You and everyone else in Ohio will be eating for free. There's no way that G-Man can win a football game. And besides, what's great PR? He hates us both right now. Remember that little meeting in the locker room on Friday? Rodney, he's just excitable. Everything's going perfectly. Perfectly? Yeah, perfectly. He offered us another $20 to put up more flyers around town. Where else can we make that kind of money? I had to admit he had a point. But there was a problem. I knew my mom and dad wouldn't want me hanging around with someone like that. And they definitely wouldn't want me taking money from him. I had decided not to tell them, for now. Suddenly, Rishi uttered words I never thought I'd hear leave his mouth. Anyway, Rodney, money isn't everything. I realized he wasn't joking when he added, just look around you. I did. Everyone was happy and smiling. A couple of students were still waiting patiently for my autograph. Maybe Rishi was right. Maybe he did know what he was doing. And don't worry, he added. I'm the one doing the heavy lifting around here. You have it easy. I even let you skip yesterday's autograph session. All you have to do is win a few football games. Now, which way did Kayla go? I didn't notice. For a split second, I had locked eyes with Trevor, the one person who had worried me. And judging from the look on his face, I had every reason to be concerned. Talk to you later, Rishi, I said. If he replied, I didn't hear him. I had to take care of something important. Trevor never walked straight to class in the morning. He would visit his office first, otherwise known as the second-floor bathroom. Today was no different. I followed him up there and watched the door close behind him with a heavy thud. I'd never been in the second-floor bathroom. Of all the bathrooms in the school, this one had the toughest reputation. I'd heard tales whispered on the bus of the things that had gone down in there over the years. Horrible stories. Stories that convinced me to make the nurse's bathroom my toilet of choice. But Trevor was in there, and I figured Trevor, our best football player, was the guy who had a slight chance of saving me from the boss. I hesitated before going in. What if he picked a fight because of all of the attention I was getting? After a few minutes, I decided it was a chance I'd have to take. I gulped, said a prayer, pushed open the door, and was immediately struck in the face. Only not by Trevor's fist. It was worse. Perhaps the most awful smell I'd ever inhaled choked me and made my eyes water. Trevor, who was washing his hands, saw me in the mirror. Like that, Rathbone, he laughed. Onion rings. I love 'em, but woo-wee! I pulled my shirt up over my nose. Good game yesterday. The defense played great. What? Trevor asked. I can't hear you through your shirt. It was clearly a trick. Without lowering my shirt, I repeated what I had said. This time he just shrugged and added more soap to his hands. I didn't see. Myself, in the paper after the game, he finally answered. I saw this other guy. Then I saw this other guy. Then I saw all these girls lined up to see this other guy. And then I got mad. But I remembered what the school psychologist is always telling me, so I didn't punch the other guy. But plus, there were some other teachers walking around. I figured maybe one day I'd get this other guy alone. And look, what do you know? This other guy is standing right in front of me. Where? I almost shouted. But Trevor didn't look like he would appreciate that. He had finished washing his hands and was now drying them by making fists. I considered bolting. Then I remembered a trick I had used on bullies in the past. Sometimes the smartest thing is to just pretend you didn't hear their threats. I think we're playing Mantua next week, I said, lowering my shirt from my nose. Think we can win? Rathbone, we never win. But maybe we could start winning. Wow, my trick had worked. Just for good measure, I threw in a compliment. You're our best player, Trevor. You could really get the team going. I'm quitting. The shock made me inhale sharply. After spluttering and wiping my watering eyes, I managed, What? You can't quit. You're too good. What I wanted to say was, you can't quit or the boss will make beef parmesan out of me. Rodney, I played football to impress the girls. Josie won't even speak to me. My heart's not into playing anymore. You know how it is. He looked more depressed than fearsome. I'm done with football, he continued. You said you'd get me a date. How's that going? Not too good, I bet. This was horrible. Every time I mentioned Trevor to Josie, she'd go, Ew, he's gross, and start in about the demolition derby date. There was no way I could get her to go out with him. Trevor stared at himself in the mirror for a few long seconds. Then he turned to me and took a step closer. The mean, scary look was back in his eyes. Yeah, Rathbone. There's not much point in playing anymore, is there? Looks like there's only one thing left to make me happy. He cracked his knuckles and stepped closer still. I'm not sure if it was the threat of Trevor's fist or picturing cheese lurking outside my bedroom window, but my mouth took over. Trevor, guess what I came in here to tell you? He paused. My mouth continued. I got you a date with Josie next Saturday night. Rodney, that's the best thing anyone's ever told me. I owe you. I'll do you any favor. He grabbed my hand and started pumping it up and down. Good thing I'd seen him wash so thoroughly. Any favor? I repeated. Just try to win next week. Josie said she'd love to see the G-Men win at least one time when she's head cheerleader. Don't worry about me. I'm going to make sure we win. Hey, you're not lying, are you? His grip tightened. I never lie, I lied. No, Josie said she couldn't wait. His hand released mine, and he actually tousled my hair. Rodney, you're the best. He turned back to the mirror. Do you think I need a haircut? He smiled at himself, then made his hand look like a gun and fired at his reflection. You know what? It doesn't matter. I look good either way. See you at practice, Rathbone. He walked out. What had I gotten myself into? There was no way Josie was going out with Trevor on Saturday. My life was beginning to stink worse than this bathroom. That afternoon, I stared out my window. How was I going to set up a date between Josie and Trevor? I kept trying to come up with a plan, but it was no good. I was drawing a blank. I knew deep down that this problem was way beyond anything my brain could figure out. It called for someone so shrewd, so devious, so manipulative that even the CIA would fear him. Rishi, I said into the phone, I need your help. That's what I'm here for. What can I do? Contact the papers for interviews? Speak to the boss about expanding our role? No, not that. Just listen for a second. I have to get a date with Josie next Sat. Holy smokes! Josie, the cheerleader? I thought you still liked Jessica. Rishi, I get it. You're trying to make Jessica jealous. Sneaky, Rodney, sneaky. But I like it. I can make a video of the date and email it to her. Rishi, you're not listening to. I'll get the boss to hold a private dinner for the two of you. Lots of candles. You should order Josie strawberries. No lobster. I got it. Chocolate dip strawberries. No, chocolate dip lobster. Rishi, I snapped. I don't want to go on the date with her. I'm talking about Trevor. There was a pause. You want to go on a date with Trevor? No! I tried again. I want Josie to go on a date with Trevor. Why would you possibly want that? Poor Rishi was having a hard time following me. Finally, he just said, "If you're looking to hook someone up on a date, I can think of a guy with dark flowing hair, skin the color of the most delicious caramel, a legendary personality." Listen, I kind of promised I'd help Trevor, that's all. He was real upset about Josie. Plus, it will make him play better. Remember, we need to start winning football games. But you're the star player. Rishi, you're beginning to believe your own publicity. That's true. See how good I am? Anyway, football isn't tennis. It's a team sport. And I need Trevor to get the defense going. Okay, I get it. Do you still like the idea of holding the date at Mama's restaurant? Yeah, that's great. I knew I could count on you to get this going. All right, Rodney. I'll call the boss right now. Besides, I want to check with him to see if he has any more work for us. Has he paid you yet for all the flyers we hung? Well, not yet, but I know he's good for it. Anyway, like I was saying, by the time I get through with that place, Mama's will be the most romantic spot east of the Mississippi. Talk to you later. Rishi was a good help, but I was still in trouble. I had a place for a date, but no way to get Josie interested in Trevor. None of my friends would have a clue what to do. I glanced up at the bulletin board above my desk. I hung pictures there from my summer at Camp Waimea. It was only about a month ago, but it seemed a world away. There was a picture of Mr. Periwinkle and me sitting under his favorite beech tree. Next to it was a picture of our cabin, Loserville. I was standing in the middle of, surrounded by all my friends. As I looked at their faces, I felt a little sad. I wondered if there was such a thing as camp sickness. Besides Josh and me, Stinky was in the picture. I could see his wet armpit stains. Next to him, Thorin held an aluminum baseball bat high above his head, pretending it was a sword named Orcrist. Next to him was my best friend in the bunch, Fernando. He was wearing a silk burgundy robe, smirking at the camera. Next to him, Fernando! I fell out of my chair. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? Fernando was a world-class expert on romance and girls. He would know what to do about Josie. I pulled open my drawer and rustled through a bunch of papers looking for the post-it with his number. Right before search panic set in, I found it stuck to a brochure from Camp Waimea. With sweaty fingers and a racing heart, I hit the numbers. If there was anyone who would know what to do, it was Fernando. It rang and rang. Eventually the message clicked on. Hello, you've reached the voicemail box of Fernando. I am currently doing something exciting and romantic, but if you leave your name, number, and text me a picture, I'll be sure to call you soon. Adios for now. Beep! Fernando, it's Rodney. I launched into my problem, giving him all the major details. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Rodney, it was great to hear your voice, and even greater to hear that you are still searching high and low for adventures. You were right to call me. This sounds like a job for Fernando. I will be there Thursday evening. Don't you have school in Canton on Friday? I asked. On Friday, I will have school in Garrettsville. How will you do that? You're not enrolled here. Leave that to Fernando. I need time in your school to get the feel. I want to meet this Josie, and I'll need to see Trevor. There is work to be done. You just get your parents ready for my visit. I'll be arriving Thursday and leaving Sunday. This will be a weekend to remember. Now I go. Click. I hoped it would be a weekend to remember for all the right reasons. Even so, I trusted Fernando and began to feel better about things. For the first time all day, I actually relaxed and stretched out in the chair, letting my eyes wander to the bulletin board. Next to the camp pictures was a big blank space where last year's calendar had hung. What the heck, I thought, getting up and grabbing something off the bed. It's not every day you're a football star. The picture of me on the back page of the paper took up half the bulletin board, but darn, I looked good. In fact, I was so busy admiring myself that I barely noticed Penny burst out laughing when she walked by. And that's the end of the chapter, and that's all we have time for.